I propose to start the first grooming meeting devoted for the Milestone 2 of MSI project. I know that there are some issues with internet connection in Austin office. That's probably why our product owner Mark Brinton can't manage to join. I already pinged him, but I suppose that he can jump in the middle of the meeting. And I prepared the list of stories, the list of possible features which we can discuss today. And I'm pretty interested to hear your opinion regarding what the stories and what the features you consider. I just got a message from Mark who's saying that he's trying to connect, but Wi-Fi doesn't work, and he asking us to wait for 1 more minute. So let's wait for him for several minutes and start after that. So let's summarize what we currently have before Mark joined us. So what we currently have in our MVP version of MSI. You can find the list of the stories implemented and delivered in the scope of the first beta of MSI on MSI roadmap page, which you can find on MSI wiki. Following the link MSI roadmap, you see that Mark is going to join us pretty soon, as soon as his laptop gonna be reloaded. And as you know, we implemented the basic functionality of multi-source inventory, which are applicable for simple, configurable, virtual, and downloadable product types. And now we have a stock reservation mechanism, which can be used for preventing overselling. And Anton can join us today, but he promised that he will watch the recording. So he will watch the recording of today's grooming. And also we have the simplest version of source selection algorithm, the source selection by priority. And different kind of synchronization with existing catalog inventory mechanism to provide a seamless way of integration and backward compatible from the code perspective way to upgrade for Magento 2.3 with MSI on board. Here I provided the possible improvements, the list of possible improvements. Some of them we already had in our backlog. Some of them appeared pretty recently. And the main idea of today's and several further meetings to decide what priorities we should choose for these features in our MSI backlog. Because as I already described you, we're going to choose the date for the next beta version to be released. From our perspective now, we see that feature complete for Magento 2.3 gonna be middle of September. So till the middle of September, we're gonna release the next beta version of MSI. And that's why we need to take into account, also we need to take into account that probably during the summer months we will get some drop of productivity because many guys from community will go on vacation. That's why probably our velocity not gonna be so big as it was during the spring. And now I propose you to step in and maybe okay. I will describe the stories which we currently have in our backlog for Milestone 2. So one of the biggest bullet points in the backlog is the support for the configuration for both source item and the stock item. Currently we in MSI we don't actually persist by ourselves the configuration for stock item, and what we actually did, we just provided the new interface, and this interface implementation of this interface proxies all the code to legacy catalog inventory stock item, and our desirable vision is to provide own persistent mechanism and to provide own database tables to store the data for both stock item configuration and the source item configuration. Also, we need to differentiate configuration for source item out of configuration for stock item. Currently, all the configuration which we have now is applicable just for stock, and the only exception from this rule is the low stock configuration, which is actually a notification based on warehouse level, so based on the source level. And we don't have some generic source item configuration now. So we have a configuration for low quantity notification, which is applicable for source. But looks like we need to introduce the configuration on the source level. For example, specify what shipment providers supported by the by a particular source, and actually these are pretty two big technical items, but these items eventually will give us an ability to totally separate existing catalog inventory mechanism out of newly created the inventory provided by MSI, because currently we are still coupled to the legacy system. Another point of coupling to the legacy system that we don't support bundle and group products. These are next two items in our product backlog. because currently we don't provide support of multi-sourcing for both bundle and group products, and bundle and group products are supported just on default stock and default source. And actually that's why we have this special cases for default source and default stock. And this is actually the reason why we are not allowed to, for example, to disable default source, and why we are not allowed to add more sources to default stock. That's why we have this kind of single stock case represented by default stock and default source. And the main reason because we are reusing existing catalog inventory stock status index, which is capable to make an indexation for bundle and group products. So reusing the existing legacy catalog inventory stock status index, we actually preserve the ability of indexation of bundle and group products. So these are two items, the main goal of which is to provide ability to, first of all, to make an indexation of bundle and group products for multi-sourcing, and support the bundle and group products at the time of the source selection algorithm. Another items in our backlog is actually this kind of pretty related stuff to what we already discussed. So if we will decouple, and if we will provide if we will provide an ability of indexation of complex products, and if we will provide own stock and source configuration MSI, we would not be so strict regarding the default stock, and we can provide an ability to assign other sources than default one to default stock. And this item is devoted for this functionality. Also, we have an epic devoted for the mass inventory action, especially reassignment of source item from and to different sources. And we are going to support this functionality as an easy onboarding process when single stock merchant is going to become a multi-stock, and he is reassigning source item from default source to other already pre-created sources. Currently, we already have an epic which describes this behavior, and now we already have Ricardo, who is currently working on this epic functionality. Other item in our backlog is to provide an ability to switch off default source and default stock. And this item currently also dependent on the bundle and group product support and also configuration. And another bullet point which we got recently to our backlog was brought by Paul, who proposed to introduce a reservation on the level of source. So here we have the item devoted for this functionality. Also, we have an item devoted for the stock reservation by time. So the shopping cart reservation, which provide the merchant an ability to specify some time. And during that time, the system will reserve some product in a given quantity for customer who put this product in a given quantity into his shopping cart. Also, pretty big and pretty important topic in our backlog is providing the store pickup for multi-source inventory. And in this case, it means that we need to specify some way that the source gonna be used as a store pickup source. And for this particular source, we should generate dedicated index. And in this case, source selection algorithm gonna be done manually by customer, because customer would be provided a list of sources which support the store pickup, and the customer will choose manually what sources or source should fulfill his order. And also, at least we had an intention to improve our source selection algorithm, and along with priority-based algorithm, which we currently have implemented in MSI, we wanted to introduce the minimal delivery cost. And in our case, minimal delivery cost supposed to be implemented as an assumption that the lowest distance between the warehouse and the destination address, the lower cost for this delivery merchant will pay. So that's why we wanted to introduce the geo-positioning based on the source address and the shipping address. Another stuff which is also pretty important, and this one is supposed to be mandatory for us, that we need to provide the performance comparison for Magento 2.3 without MSI and for Magento 2.3 with MSI, and we need to provide. We already have PAT scenarios. In our PAT scenarios, this is a set of performance acceptance tests. So that we need to introduce the fixtures, which introduce different sources, combine them in different stocks, and apply different scenarios like order placement, like work with the shopping cart. And we need to make sure that we are not introduce any performance degradation on the scenarios working as a customer. Also, we have pretty small story regarding support of the negative threshold for backorder functionality. And currently this story is under development by Alessandra. And the idea of the story was brought by Paul, who proposed us to implement an ability to specify the negative threshold for min quantity if the backorder functionality is switched on for a particular product. The next item is add ability to specify that source has some type, like drop shipper, to apply it for the source selection. The idea of this story is to provide a way to somehow differentiate different type of sources. For example, to specify that the source belongs to or represents the drop shipper, and in this case, for example, our source selection algorithm will consider will consider it as a lower priority, and will try to fulfill order from all other sources. And if just when all other sources and the products on all other sources are running out, we can use the source which is drop shipper. And the next story devoted for integration MSI and the product and the new type of the API introduced by the Magento 2.3. So the product GraphQL. So in the scope of the GraphQL request for product, it should be possible to retrieve the stock information for this product. So this story is supposed to provide this functionality and extend the existing GraphQL queries for product. And still, we continue working on a test coverage of new MFTF framework for all the S0 and S1 scenarios for different operation, different scenarios for inventory management and product placement and the shipment creation. So all of the S0, S1 scenarios created in a heap test and can consider it as the most important for manipulation and working with inventory mechanism. So these are the main stories which we already have in our product backlog, and let's discuss, and maybe you have some other proposal regarding the story which we need to include in Milestone 2. I just want to say that this is not the full list of stories, and we don't give a guarantee that all of these stories would be implemented at the end of Milestone 2. So now we are trying to compose the backlog, and after that we will prioritize it, and after that we will estimate all of the stories. So currently I provide the estimate based on the T-short estimation, like sizes S, M, L, and XL. And after that, we will try to prioritize them and sort the backlog, having all the stories with the highest priority on the top of this backlog. And at the latest stage, we will take the most important ones for us. For the scope of the Milestone 2. So, guys, question for all the participants on the call: whether you think that we need to add something more to the list of the stories which I just mentioned, and describe.
Hear me and Mark on the call. I think it makes sense from our side.
Yeah.
The only question probably would be, maybe GraphQL makes sense to move to GraphQL, but that's just easier to understand based on estimates.
Paul, maybe you have some ideas, because the last stories introduced to MSI backlog was inspired by your feedbacks. So maybe you have some ideas.
I was just listening, seeing how this all goes. So it's pretty new for me to do a conversation like this. Hope you can hear me. I had the idea to give a short backstory on why I would like to have the source reservations. Is because we have a requirement from a customer to implement the transfer orders or purchase orders in Magento. They have a product that is sold 1 month before it's shipped. Then they get a lot of sales, and then they ship everything at once. But we need to keep track of which purchase order which source the purchase is coming from. So I first thought about the idea of having the backorder quantity set to a negative, and then we can just figure out the saleable quantity of the product, and then we can just figure out where it's coming from. But then the customer mentioned that they also are required to have a single purchase order for all the items that need to be ordered. And combining those two requirements led me to the source reservations. By creating the source reservation, we can actually solve that issue, and we can introduce a source reservation for the shipment as well as for the transfer orders. I do have some documentation. I'm not sure if it's the right moment to share that right now. Should I, Igor?
Yeah, I'm stop sharing my screen, so you can actually share yours.
All right. All right. Can you see my screen right now?
Yep.
All right. So I had 2 points for the reservation system. I already did some work to actually get the reservations to work. I wrote some tests to append the reservations to the indexer, and I have to do some other stuff to actually get it to work properly. The 2 parts I wanted to use the reservations for is to actually have the ability between the source selection algorithm and the actual physical shipment of the product. Currently, in the current MSI implementation, the actual physical shipment, the Magento shipment is used as the physical shipment. But in our system, we first need to select the source and then do some API communication with the warehouse and then actually mark the shipment as shipped. But my idea was to actually implement that with a temporary shipment, a shipment document. The way it works is in the order process, it currently does a stock selection when the order is placed, of course, and then we need to create some cron job to actually automatically create the shipment documents. I'm not sure about that. I haven't worked that out yet, how to actually do it. But when a shipment is made, the order stock reservation is nullified, and a source reservation is made by the shipment. So we move the reservation from the stock to the source. Of course, the selection which a source is selected will be handled by the source selection algorithm. But the important part is we can use that as a starting point to communicate with the source, with the actual warehouse. After that, the warehouse does some stuff and it communicates back to Magento, and it will then mark the source reservation as nullified and actually deduct the actual source. That way, the quantity that is available in the warehouse will actually be matched the quantity that is that's actually set on the product in Magento. I believe that was the case with the earlier situation as well, but now we have the part in between. I thought about a cancel step. I'm not sure what to do about that, but I can imagine that it would be interesting to have a cancel state on a shipment that you can re-ship, that you can recreate a shipment when the warehouse doesn't actually have it in stock, which happens sometimes because they do not always track their quantities properly. So that was one part. The other part is what I wanted to create, or what I'm required to create for the customer are transfer orders. Transfer orders are actually like shipments from a source to a different source. So you have we have 2 types. We care about the stock of the source, or we do not care about the stock of the source. When you care about the stock of the stores, it's of the source, it's probably your own warehouse or something that you manage stock for, or it's an external supplier that you do not manage stock for. So when we're creating a transfer order, there will be an interface in the backend of Magento that you can create a transfer order, and the seller or the merchant can add products, define its quantities. And then when the transfer order is confirmed, the quantities are handled in the in the system. When you have a from source, the quantities are deducted from the source reservation table. So from the warehouse where you're shipping from, the quantities are reserved, so they can be sold on the web shop. And on the to source, they are actually added to the source reservation table, that they are allowed to be sold. This means that the from source now has fewer products on the source index quantity, like it will have fewer products on the eventual saleable quantity, and the to source now has a higher quantity on the eventual saleable quantity. Then when it's shipped, the quantities will actually be deducted from the source, from the from source quantity. The reservations are removed. The to source still has the reservations because the package hasn't actually arrived at the new location. So they are still in the reservation mode, so no changes made. And then when the actual products are received, I'm a little bit, I haven't thought this part out, because there can be a difference between the actual products that are shipped and what's actually received because of faulty products and broken products, etc. But I was looking at some other interfaces that implemented the same functionality, and they had the extra fields like received, rejected, and canceled. Not sure what to do about that yet. But after saving the transfer order, the to source items are also added to the actual quantities on the products, and that allows us to create the flow. So that's the target we are working towards. We have a release of this November, so we expect to have everything built for then. There are some discussion I had some discussion with one of you guys what to actually do with all the code we've written, because we still have some discussion what we should actually publish open source. But one of the most basic parts is the source reservation API. It's currently implemented, and it currently it currently is almost an exact copy of the inventory reservation API, because it follows a lot of the same patterns. I do have some questions how I should implement some stuff, because I have the plugin that I actually need to append the indexer with some additional information. But I have to figure some query stuff out, how to actually solve it. So that's about it, what I had so far. If anybody got any feedback, let me know.
Actually, like my biggest question for you regarding the idea you just described, whether you need really different statuses
for shipment
of the source reservation, I mean, or you just want to save the source selection algorithm and not make the source deduction immediately after we run the source selection algorithm. So maybe, because, for example, the main intention could be just to introduce kind of cache level source selection algorithm and save it, introducing kind of reservation for sources. Yeah, and which will provide you an ability, for example, to print the shipment documents, and when you make the real deduction, you can apply this algorithm, and it results to deduct the particular amount from sources. So. Actually, this is a question. So whether you need some cache layer, or you really need to introduce the source reservation?
Well, it's the idea is that the new so the question is like this: should we create the new shipment state, or should we just create a new entity that's a request, or should we just have the result of the source selection algorithm? Should we have that? We had an earlier discussion, and the point is the source selection result of one order can influence the source selection result of another order. So we actually need to, I actually need to know for sure that I'm able to fulfill both orders correctly, if you know what I mean. So the dependency between the orders is actually important as well. So therefore I need to actually have commitment from the warehouse. I'm not sure what the word commitment means. So for promise from the warehouse that they can say, okay, I will probably be able to handle this. So it's not something that actually can be properly, once it's created, it shouldn't be able to be changed without an official flow. It's more than caching.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what it means. So because I try to write down the two advantages. The advantages of the proforma shipment or the depending shipment or the shipment states. So that we only need to introduce a state for the shipment in the system, and else all the UIs and almost everything stays the same. So from my perspective, it's a relatively minimal effort to do. And then we already have every different system that actually creates the shipment request. And it's something like a new API. The advantage of that is that the shipments do not actually have to be changed, and the meaning of a shipment doesn't actually have to change. So I'm not really sure at the moment, but I do not find it odd to have shipment statuses.
And okay, I got your point.
Mm-hmm.
And do you consider that reservation on the level of the source is a feature which needed for those merchants who has integration with ERP system?
Yeah, because at the moment, for example, if the quantity in the warehouse is 10 and you do an API request from the warehouse and you fetch the 10 and then you just put the 10 in the quantity of the order. But there's a time difference between when a shipment is requested at the warehouse and when it's actually deducted from the warehouse. So most warehouses in our experience also have like in some form the same concepts like saleable quantity and actual quantity. And if I implement the pending state, if I actually implement the state before the current shipment, if we do not have the reservations, I will now have to actually deduct the source, and I will actually break things more than they currently are. I think it currently works fine because you actually create a shipment when the actual inventory is deducted in the warehouse itself. But if I use the shipment request functionality, then I think I deduct the inventory too early.
So you mean that in this case, the shipment request functionality gonna be kind of web API to the external system?
Yeah, I think when the shipment request is made, when the first state of a shipment is made, I think that's a trigger to actually push all the shipment requests to the warehouse too, and they will confirm it, and I think that will happen in one go. If that makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm not sure about about this detail, if it's an actual extension on the shipment or it's an actual new entity, and yeah, I'm not really.
Regarding this entity,
mm-hmm.
I can show you.
So should I stop sharing?
Yeah, you can.
I'm not sure how to do this. I'll stop sharing. All right.
So based on our conversation on Friday,
mm-hmm.
I created this ticket.
Yeah.
And Sergey already assigned this ticket to
yeah, nice.
And here, yeah. So in the scope of this ticket, looks like the main the service which currently makes the source deduction. So the source deduction service, and here the source deduction request interface can represent the source source reservation.
Yeah, I think so.
And actually, we can even rename it to source reservation. And I believe we can put it into dedicated module, because currently it's a part of the inventory shipping.
Yeah.
But taking into account that this service could be called as a part of the RMA process, or create memo, or returns it, or so forth. It probably makes sense to put it into a dedicated module. Yeah. And I'm just thinking also about all the possible statuses of this reservation. You already mentioned part of these statuses, and you mentioned that in some cases this reservation is supposed to be nullified.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's the same way. It's currently already nullified. When you do reservations right now, it's also nullified, right? It's also nullified from the order to the shipment. So that's what I meant. So,
like, introducing the compensational reservation is also an option. And as I see, you already have some code.
Yeah.
So do you already have some working prototype to?
Well, I've got a test that's already running. I can show it to you. I'll click the share screen again. So I currently have written a test. I'm using the fixtures. I think the source indexer is using as well. So what is happening is it's currently I'm appending. So I have the fixtures. It actually creates all the inventory, and then I have the yeah, I think I've made a single bug, but most of them are succeeding right now. The thing that's happening, so it creates all the default stock source items, and then it binds them to a single stock. And now I can append the reservation. I'll show you the method. The reservation builder, it works the same way as the reservation already does for the stocks, and it just in a lot of the code is almost an exact replica of that. So this part is working, and I have the append reservations clause that actually appends the reservations. I do have some to-dos here and there to actually solve some issues. What it currently does, this item, this Q1 on stock item 10, I append 5 items. It should have 8.5, and but I append 5, so there's 13.5 what it actually should have. And then I do the actual comparison. I do some. I also reset it in the test, but it's more like a cleanup. So this part works. I think that's good. I do have some other to-dos I still need to do to actually have it fully working, because we have the indexer part, I think, that I have to get working, and I have the
And do you already have this source level reservation integrated in our source deduction process, like shipment?
No, I'm not there yet. So I've currently have these two source reservation. I'm now working on the shipment statuses thingy so I'm going to work on that next. But I think it's more about, for me, it's more about figuring everything out, where everything is, and that was the origin of my question earlier. Why there were, I think, the process quantity back item or something.
Yeah.
So that was the origin of that question, and I think if I figured everything out, where everything belongs and everything should belong, I think it's sort of straightforward to actually implement it.
By the way, what kind of UI are you going to provide, or?
So the idea is that I think the idea is that I'm introducing a new status column on the shipments. I have to think about what if you do not want to use the functionality. If you have like the current use case, if you should even have if you should even have that. So I have to think about the like, how do I say it? Like the flag you have for payments, if it's online or offline, a payment determines if the invoice has different statuses, and something like that should also be implemented for the shipments, but I'm not sure how to actually do that yet. And then for the interface itself, I think it's just create shipment and then confirm shipment or mark as shipped button in the admin panel, and that maybe allows you to actually, like the way it, I do not have a very advanced UI planned right now.
Mm-hmm.
I thought work the API first and then do the UI after that.
Mark, maybe you have some question regarding this functionality described by Paul.
Yeah, well, the first half of the description, we were having, again, some Wi-Fi issues, so I feel like I have parts of it.
All right.
Yeah, is this something that you have anywhere else other than just in your IDE, something online, or?
No, it's a little bit fresh. I haven't actually published anything yet.
Okay.
I had some discussion with one of the other guys about how we should contribute everything, and if I and we had some discussion with our internal marketing what the how we should handle this, how we should actually handle this, because it's a lot of work we're doing for the complete functionality, and how should we actually,
Sure. Yeah, no, that's an internal discussion you need to have.
Yeah.
From my perspective, my main concern is whether this is a feature that we need across, a really common set of merchants.
Yeah. I think it's valuable. I think it's something valuable if the merchant has actual integration with a third-party warehouse. I agree that the transfer order functionality isn't something you'd probably want to have for each merchant, but I think the shipment and the shipment reservation part is because you do the main point is you need a point between the source selection algorithm and the actual creation of the shipment, because the warehouse needs to do something in between. You actually need to ship something, and that's the main point. And I think every web shop that has a connector with an external warehouse will actually need to do something.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the use case.
Okay.
And if that's something you guys deem valuable for the product, I think that's for you to decide. But I think it can offer an streamlined workflow for integrating fulfillment into your system. So
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
For everyone, for Igor, regarding this functionality, this idea of source related reservations.
Mm-hmm.
From what I see, using source related reservation, we could decouple the application of source selection algorithm at shipment time. I mean, in the end, the source selection algorithm has the task of splitting stock-related reservations into one or more source-related reservations without affecting the stock. And it's only when we concretely ship for a source that we can have stock deduction. So it's another way of deferring this stock deduction and in some way saving the result of the source selection algorithm by splitting these stock reservations into multiple source reservations. This is the idea as far as I've understood.
Yeah, I think that's a very nice way of putting it. I have
this.
Yeah.
Okay. This probably we should consider this change as useful regardless of the specific need that Paul has now. This can be useful to, yes, to not be bounded to the shipment. We already seen that, for example, for some products, we don't have shipment. For virtual, for downloadable products, we don't have shipment. So the idea that we deduct stock at shipment time has been proven not being correct. So maybe we can discuss about this change. What do you think about?
I think that's if it's my turn to speak. I think that's exactly the point. I'm not sure. I think you describe exactly the issues I run into, that the shipment isn't exactly the moment you actually need to deduct something always. And I need to have, yeah, okay, all right. I'm not sure how to further respond to that.
May I share my screen?
Yeah, sure.
I just did this moment that I finish. Where is Zoom? Okay. Do you see this picture?
The diagram?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the diagram. Yes,
Yeah.
this is what I sketched out while Paul was speaking. At the moment, we have an order that causes stock reservations to be placed, and we don't have these two blocks. And when we have the shipment, we apply the source selection algorithm that create compensational reservations. With the idea described by Paul, we can have the order that places reservations, the source selection algorithm which converts source reservations into stock reservations, and only when we have stock deductions, when we have shipment or another event, for example, we can apply stock deduction and for example, compensate the source reservations and update the stock quantity. This is what.
Well, are you proposing that the stock deduction happens at the time that sort of selection to source happens, or at shipment?
No, what I'm proposing is decoupling the stock deduction from the shipment, but taking notes of splitting the stock reservations into source reservations. We can apply the source selection. Sorry, what I'm proposing is decoupling the source selection algorithm from the shipment.
Yeah.
So we can apply the source selection algorithm and the source selection algorithm transforms the stock reservations into source reservations. So we have the information of which source must be addressed by.
I just want to say that currently our source selection algorithm is not really coupled to shipment, because if it would be, probably it would manipulate with order object, but currently our source selection algorithm manipulate with abstraction layer, and that's why it is potentially possible to use the source selection algorithm at the time of the order placement working with code. So currently we have kind of factory, and the factory with the name something like build the source selection request based on order. So for example, injecting source selection algorithm at the time of the order placement, system integrator needs just to introduce kind of factory build source selection request based on quote, and actually he can manage to do pretty the same. So I wouldn't say that currently we have a high coupling on a shipment. But what I think about the Paul proposal, that that in MSI we have potential synchronizational issues, and these issues supposed to be handled by system integrator, because sometimes we as a framework don't know the correct behavior. For example, what to do if we have the reservation for minus 100 items, and our stock availability is 200. But after the reservation is placed, we have the synchronization with the source item and getting data from ERP system, and now our stock availability is not 200 but just 50 items, and actually this means that we are not able to fulfill the order. So here we have, and actually that's the responsibility of system integrator to make the decision what to do with this order, whether, because currently our system is not able to fulfill it anymore. And here we have the pretty similar situation with the reservation on the level of the source items. For example, like if the order been placed and we created stock reservation and we created the shipment, and now actually, as I understood Paul, when the shipment is created, we supposed to create the compensational reservation on the stock level, and we need to create the first reservation on the source level to make the source deduction. But for the source deduction, we will have several steps, like we already made a decision from which sources we will fulfill the order, but these items are not shipped yet, so it's kind of source requested. So here for us probably it would be even more different situation when the data, when we have the reservation on the level of the source item, but somewhere in the middle we get synchronization with external system, and we will get an update of our source item quantity. And after we get the update for the source item quantity, we can realize that we are not able to fulfill so we get some data inconsistency.
Yeah, but the idea is that the source reservation happens synchronously with the API call to the warehouse, or actually as soon as possible, that issue is minimized. And I agree that that's a situation that can happen, but in our practice or in our experience, that's actually manually resolved then by the customer service somewhere, because it's a use case that should not happen. But I agree that's not a satisfying answer for this issue. But the idea was to minimize those moments by doing the API calls synchronously at the moment when you actually run the source selection algorithm. Or like fetch the quantities before the source selection algorithm is run, and then do the algorithm, so they have the most actual source quantities that are available, that you have the most accurate. So I agree that's an issue, but I'm not sure how big the issue is. Maybe you guys have other customers where the issue is much bigger, but I'm not sure.
Okay, I stop share.
I'm just thinking in this case, what's gonna be the source of truth, whether it's gonna be an ERP system or Magento, because in this case, all the like source deduction requests are gonna be made from Magento standpoint.
Yeah.
But
in this case, it is. Yeah.
So just how to like, if you get getting stuck in this problem, that's definitely data inconsistency. But what system should be debugged in a way to find an issue, whether it's going to be Magento or whether ERP, because it's not clear now. Because some of the requests which come from Magento could not be delivered to ERP, or maybe ERP get an update from another system if it's omni-channel environment.
Mm-hmm.
There are some other systems which update the quantity on ERP.
I'm not sure what the actual question is. The question is where actually it should be debugged. What is happening?
So because
I think by actually offering the multiple steps in the shipment, if we would, or the split between the source selection API and actual API communication to the warehouse and the actual shipment, if we have those steps available, I think we can prevent a lot of the issues, because then you have the entry points to actually they have the hooks to actually do some API checks with the warehouse or the ERP system if the inventory is actually in stock. Mm-hmm. And I think that was mainly the point, because I want to confirm the source selection, and because I cannot wait until shipment. Mm-hmm. And so I think in a way the problem you're describing is a problem, but I think it's an extension of the bigger problem that actually was there. The bigger problem that actually is there without the source reservation, because right now I can't do anything. I need to store the source reservation some way, mm-hmm. because I can't just run the reservation the algorithm and then just do the API calls and then hope for the best that everything pans out in the end. Mm-hmm. Of course. So.
Okay, got it. So I propose the next way. So we will finish and during this week the ticket which was created to introduce a single extension point for the source deduction, and nice. You will see the results of this ticket in the main line. I hope during this week. Yeah. And later we can, and also you will have the discussion internally what you're going to do with the extension you will write on top of MSI with the source selection algorithm.
Yeah.
And later we sync up and discuss our further steps.
All right, I think that's a good idea.
Okay, so if guys, we're a bit running out of time, but if you have some spare time, we can discuss pretty not, at least not so big feature regarding the negative minimal threshold, which I believe more or less clear for all of us. And Alessandro currently stepped into this feature implementation. So if you don't mind, we can discuss it.
Yeah, I have to jump to another meeting. I'm familiar with that issue already, and I think it's a good idea. But I have to jump to another meeting now.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
Bye.
Bye. All right, I can redescribe the issue if you'd like.
Yep.
All right, so the whole point we were just talking about the transfer order stuff. Transfer orders are like pre-orders, so that are orders that are already placed that will be eventual stock on a source. And back orders are like, yeah, just place the orders and we'll figure out where the items will come from when they are actually placed. So that's like the back order functionality. It's yeah. I thought the feature came from a miscommunication because we implemented the negative min sale quantity in Magento 1 for one of our customers, which does the multi-warehouse thing and has the transfer orders and the and etc. So we implemented there. So it was more of a question. Why doesn't this functionality work? Because that would solve the backorder issue we had for that use case, and then the ball, then everything became clear that it's just the way Magento worked, has always worked. But indeed, I think it's a relatively easy fine-tune to make or feature to build. So that's it.
Alessandra, is there any open question from your side regarding implementation?
No, to me it's clear. You already proposed the solution in the discussion. I think it's clear what I have to implement. If I have an issue, I will contact you. If there aren't any further details from Paul, for me it's okay. But I think that it's described pretty well in the discussion, in the issue, in the page, the issue page. So.
By the way, the main question probably I have from the look and feel perspective. So currently we decided that we will allow to specify the negative threshold. So negative means sale quantity threshold. I'm not wrong about the correct naming of this parameter. Just in case when the backorder is enabled for a particular product. That what to do if we switch on the backorder and apply the negative quantity for this threshold, and after that we disable backorder. So should we nullify the min quantity threshold, or so what to do from the user perspective?
If you disable backorders, if you don't allow backorders on particular product, to me, any threshold which is less or equal than 0 is equivalent to 0. It's not.
So you propose not to change the configuration option, but just to make it equal to 0 in our computations?
Yes. If backorder are not allowed, any value that's 0 or less than 0 is the same. I mean, the threshold, in case backorders are not enabled, is only meaningful for values that are more than 0 in this case. So probably we can check the status of backorder, and in case it's enabled, if it's backorder are enabled, we consider the full range of the values, and in case backorder are not enabled, we only consider values 0 or more values.
Okay, sounds good to me. So probably it makes sense because we will not override the negative threshold.
Yeah, I wouldn't change the value because the user could think that's a bug and not a feature.
Yep.
I would leave the value as is, but I think it's intuitive that if you have backorders, a negative threshold is not meaningful. So maybe
probably along with that, we need to introduce kind of tooltip to the mean quantity threshold.
Some explanation.
Yeah,
some explanation.
provide an explanation for the negative quantity which now can be provided, and the meaning of this negative quantity.
Yeah.
So sounds good. So guys, probably it's time to finish this.
I do have a question.
Yeah, of course.
One final thing: the potential pitfall of using the when you let me share my screen.
Yep.
Second. So when you fill in a negative quantity like this,
yep.
Now understand what it should do. It should allow backwards below 0. But when you do this, what should it do? Because it becomes when I enter -85, it becomes clear that I should only allow 85. But when I enter 0, what should it do? Do I actually do not allow backorders, or should I allow backorders? What's happening? And when you allow backorders and you enter a positive number, what do you actually what is actually happening? So that's more of a question for me, because maybe I hadn't thought it through myself properly, but I'm thinking about it right now.
That's kind of a brilliant question. $1 million question. And
then when you use config, it still has the value. It still reports a value, and it's like the feature I wanted, and it's not this field, because the thing I wanted is allow quantity below 0, and then have a field like here. Yeah, but only until -85 or something.
Yeah, I already did a change in the code base that if backorders are allowed, this threshold at the moment is meaningless. If you allow backorders, this threshold is ignored.
Yeah.
So it's the opposite of the discussion we had before. In case backorders are allowed, any value which is positive is not meaningful.
Yeah. All right.
So probably even in this case we can exploit tooltips or comments to explain that these values are in some way related, and that in case you set up values that are not meaningful together, you have to know that positive out of stock threshold with backorders allowed or not.
Is it maybe an idea to just move the field to below backorder config, or actually have them in proximity next to each other? I'm not sure if that's too big of a request, but
Paul, let me rephrase you. Your question sounds like, if we apply backorders allowing quantity below 0, the out of stock threshold supposed to be just negative?
Yeah, I think it only can be negative, and when it's 0, it should be infinite. Well, when you fill in 0, it below 0 and 0, it says something, and when you have it 0, it's like infinite.
Yeah.
It's like this, and then you have, or you fill in an actual negative number, and the other way around, if you do not allow backorders. Yeah. Well, then then the negative value is useless, but. So the infinite thing came It's the second time it popped up for me because it was also for the saleable quantity. If you allow back orders, the saleable quantity becomes infinite at some point. If you do not limit the back orders, it's infinite by definition. So I think that was some confusion we also had about that thing. I'm not sure how to proceed, but so that was the thing I wanted to share.
Definitely makes sense. It's a little bit pity that Mark already disconnected because this sounds like a good question to him. So I will, after the end of this meeting, I will share the recording and ping Mark to provide the answer, and I'll ask to provide his answer in a MSI Slack channel. So I expect that he'll describe from the user perspective how to better implement this functionality.
Yeah. All right.
So cool. It was a good starting meeting for the grooming session about Milestone 2 functionality for MSI. Thank you for collaboration.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yep. And see you soon. Thanks.
Bye. Thank you.
For your valuable feedbacks.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.